Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as Ruben Amorim faces a big January transfer decision. Is it loan or buy? There are plenty of names that Man United have been linked in relation to loaning, but should they be looking to buy as Ruben Amorim potentially looks to break his transfer promise? I couldn't get the words out. I'm flustered. Looks to break his transfer promise with scouts watching Sporting last night. Sporting absolutely demolished by Arsenal. Could Man United make moves for Sporting players as well? We've also got an update on the left back. You can vote on the left back you would like to go for. There are 3 apparently leading the race now. 5 strikers has now become 7. But we have got this story on Evan Ferguson to talk about as well. We've also got some interesting insight from another person from Portugal, just to give us a little bit more information on Amorim that we always like as well. And I suppose the big update this morning is, how is the cat? If you know, you know. Well, the cat is fine. It had got behind the cooker under the cupboards. I did have to kick the cupboards in. The cat came out, but I suppose that's the most important thing. You can't leave a cat locked in under a cupboard. It would never have got out, and the noise would have got annoying. And I suppose the smell eventually. So yes, we got the cat out, of course. Let's fly into the show. Brando Dave, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much for getting your badge in. And Andre Smith has been a member for 20 months as well. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not Zuma Bridge, Diego. I'm absolutely the opposite of Zuma Bridge, if you think about it. Anyway, lots to get into on the show. It is the press conference today as well. Amorim will be talking to the press at 1 o'clock with Bruno Fernandes. I'm sure there'll be some good questions put to him. Obviously, we previewed the game against Bodo Glimt last night, and he will get some questions about that. But I think we all know with a Man United manager in a press conference, he's going to get a lot of questions, bigger, and we've certainly got some good ones for him if Beth gets the opportunity to ask him one. Okay, let's hit the news then. So, sort of came in last night at the end of the preview. We didn't really get a chance to talk about it, but Evan Ferguson is up for loan/sale by Brighton. Now, this is a player that Man United have been linked to for a long time, a very long time. It feels like years and years, but he's only 20, so it's probably the last 2 years if we're being honest. Some people are saying we could loan Evan Ferguson, and of course we could do. I don't know where I sit on this one. Give me your thoughts, because there's no doubt that he is a good player, and there's no doubt that at 20 years of age he's got a lot of the attributes you would expect. And I think about 18 months ago I was very excited about the player. But do you need to pose the question why he's surplus to requirements at Brighton? I mean, he's behind 3 strikers at Brighton, so he's 4th choice. This is why Brighton want to move him on. He wants to play minutes. There's even talk that if a decent offer came in, they'd sell him. So is this the sort of signing that Manchester United should go for? I'm going to pop it in the poll straight away, because I think that without reading any of your comments and just giving you my thoughts on Evan Ferguson, I think the one thing that jumps out to me straight away is that it's another young striker. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. If they both play well and score goals, you're actually set for a long, long time. We sort of had this with Rashford and Martial a few years ago, where we had them at like 20 and thought, you know, we're set for the next 10 years. It didn't work out. I don't think that was because of lack of ability. I think it was because of injury and other issues. So it can work out with 2 strikers. But I think that with Rasmus at 21, Xerxes 23, and then Evan Ferguson at 20, there isn't really an experienced striker. And the reason Gyökeres is on the thumbnail and the reason Evan Ferguson is on the thumbnail is that Man United had scouts at Sporting last night. They did. They probably would have had scouts there anyway, to be honest, because we always have scouts. But some people are putting 2 and 2 together and putting 5 and getting 5 and saying that what Amorim said last week about not signing Sporting players in January, could that change? The premise of that is I don't think he made that promise intending to change it. But obviously, if Sporting are open to selling in January and there's competition for a signing that Man United want, I think it could change. Hypothetically, I'm talking Gyökeres, who, look, he probably will stay at Sporting till the end of the season. But as we know with Bruno, sometimes you've got to steal a march. And if Man United can do a deal for Gyökeres in January, and it's going to be harder to do it in the summer, and Sporting are willing to do it, and Gyökeres wants to do it, why would you not do it? I know Amorim said we'll wait till the summer, but it's sort of like, look, you can throw Moani in there from PSG. He's available. Jonathan David is available. We spoke about Boniface last night. There are strikers available in this market and in the summer transfer market. Victor Osimhen is only on loan in Turkey. So there's plenty of strikers. We got linked to that lad. I forget his name. I'll tell you in a minute. Bundesliga. Doing really well at the moment. Begins with an M. Brain blank. That doesn't begin with an M. That's not who I'm talking about. So I think that there are definitely players to... Matthew Fox talks about De Ketelaere at Atalanta to United. Watch this space. I mean, he's always been a player with a lot of potential. I will watch that space. Mamouche, yeah, that's it. He's been linked to us as well. So there's a lot of strikers that Man United could go for. And I suppose the question is, would you go loan or would you go sale? Would you go cheap or would you go best you can get? And I think there is a vast array of strikers that Manchester United could go for. I mean, I was reading what Plettigol had to say, the German journalist we were talking about yesterday. And effectively what he said about the striker situation was that Man United currently have 4 strikers on Man United's shortlist at the moment. Mamouche, Moani, Boniface and Osimhen. So add into that Gyökeres and now Evan Ferguson, there's 6 choices there. Now, I like Mamouche is doing very well. I think he's quite young as well, isn't he? I mean, I'd need to just double check this because I don't want to give out false information, but I think he's 25 for some reason. 25. Yeah, he's 25. Obviously doing very well in the Bundesliga with Eintracht Frankfurt at the moment. And again, look, could be an interesting opportunity for somebody, could be an interesting opportunity for Manchester United. Moani, we know at PSG, could leave. Osimhen is an interesting name. And we've spoken about Boniface yesterday. But you add in Evan Ferguson and Gyökeres, and I think Man United have got to make a big decision here. There's almost too many. I mean, who would you go for out of those 6 if you had to take one? For me, it's still Gyökeres out of them 6. I mean, maybe Victor Osimhen, to be fair, because if he's on it, he's on it. But I like Gyökeres. I was watching him yesterday against Sporting, and you know what I like about Gyökeres is that he's got the experience, he's definitely got the hunger, he's played with Amorim before, and he's a really different type of striker. Even like Arsenal, for me, the centre-backs at Arsenal are arguably the 2 best centre-backs in Europe. As a pair, I think you would say, obviously Van Dijk and Konate this season doing very, very well as well. But I think Saliba and Gabriel have proven over the last 2 years that they are a fantastic centre-back pairing in European football. And I know they got beat 5-1 yesterday, but Gyökeres did have chances, sort of created himself. And his biggest problem last night was smacking it too hard, very hard, over the bar. But he occupies centre-backs. He works really hard. He runs the channels. And I think that I just see in that player something... I see it in Rasmus, but I don't think Rasmus is at that point yet. I mean, Gyökeres is 27 and Rasmus is 21. And I think that if you were going to go for a striker out of Evan Ferguson, Gyökeres, Osimhen, Mamouche, Boniface or Moani or Jonathan David... Gyökeres is probably worth that little bit more because he ticks all the boxes of experience, work ethic, goals, played with Amorim in this system, which is actually very, very important. But I don't know whether Man United have the appetite or the money to go and get that type of striker. Hence, it's a decision, isn't it? Because if you don't go for that, do you go for Evan Ferguson? We'll have to wait and see. What I will say is that a 1997 in CJT is absolutely spot on. Gyökeres knows the system, which, when we're playing this system, is very, very important. What was I going to say? Yeah, in relation to Evan Ferguson, I also don't think that's a loan deal for Man United. I think that's a loan deal for Celtic. I think that's a loan deal for the Championship. I think it's a loan deal for a French league team like Marseille or something like that. I don't think that's a loan deal for Chelsea or Manchester United or Newcastle. I don't think Brighton are going to go, yeah, go and get some minutes at a Premier League rival. I don't see it. Maybe, I don't think they'd even let him go to Brentford. I think maybe they'd let him go to Southampton or a Leicester or someone like that. Somebody that's really obviously going to be in a relegation battle. But I don't see them letting, and why would they? Why would you let him go on loan to Manchester United? So I just want to say that categorically now he won't be being loaned to Manchester United. I think there could be a permanent deal there. I mean, what would you rate Evan Ferguson at? 50 million? 50 million at the moment. I know they were talking about 100 million a year ago, 50 million quid. But if you're going to pay 50 million pounds for Evan Ferguson, you might get Gyökeres for 65. And Sporting would probably be quite willing to do a stage pay thing. So, look, I'm not dismissing anything. There's a lot of strikers that Man United are being linked to there this morning, and the Evan Ferguson story's coming in from the Telegraph, and it's well sourced, and Brighton are going to loan him out or sell him. But I just think if you had a choice between Ferguson and Gyökeres, and the price difference is what, 15, 20 million pounds, you go for Gyökeres. You do that. And it is interesting because I think I agree with what Chris Wheeler said yesterday, that Man United are not going to make deals like Casemiro anymore, 29-year-olds for 60 million pounds, etc., or 29-year-olds like Alexis Sanchez on 400 grand a week. I don't see that. I don't see that happening at all anymore. But what's the cutoff? What is the age that you cut off at? Because we were talking about Theo Hernandez yesterday, who I think is 27 or 28 himself. Gyökeres will be 27 in the summer. I personally think 28 is the cutoff. If there's and let me know in the chat, I think you have to have an age cutoff if you've got a policy of building a project. I'm not being ageist. You could buy a 32-year-old. If you're Man City or Liverpool or Arsenal, I'd buy a 32-year-old because you're ready to go now, and he might give you 2 years now fighting for the title. But the reason I think there has to be an age limit for Manchester United, I mean, Simon Pearce is 25, Samir says 28, Con says 30, Kaylee says 27. I actually think 27/28, because the reason for it is, if this was Manchester United in 2008 when we've just won the Champions League, I'd buy a 31-year-old. I'd buy a 32-year-old. 2 years at the top level, I don't care. That's absolutely brilliant. We're ready to go. The project's ready. But Man United at the moment, where we've not won a title for 11 years and we're not looking like we're going to win a title for the next 3, I'd be going, if I bring a 28-year-old in, is he still going to be as good as he is now at 31 when we're ready to go, hopefully? And there might be, but you don't know about that. So that's the mistake I think we made with Casemiro and other players that we bought at that age, is that we're building a project here. And you're almost playing your fans and the media to a certain extent, because when you buy Casemiro at 29 for 60 million or 70 million, everybody knows that Casemiro is not going to be the best centre midfielder in the world forever. So you're buying him for the now. When you bring Ronaldo in at 37, you know that he's not going to be the best striker in the world at 39. So you're buying him for the now. Man United have been buying players for the now when we're not ready. What we need to do is buy more players for the future, because it then sends a message that we're building a project, which we clearly are. So I think that if United are buying players at the moment, I think 28's the limit, unless it's a very, very compelling case. Because I think at 28, in 3 years' time, you could still be very, very useful. But Gyökeres is perfect, because 27 in the summer, you'd expect him 4 years, and he'd still be scoring goals. So that, for me, is perfect. But I think United are looking at that in that window of 17 to 25, which is right for me. Mark, can you do an in-depth video on the Premier League strikers and chances they get versus our strikers? Some prats were comparing Nicholas Jackson with Rasmus. I can certainly bring some stats into that. Yeah, definitely. Good call, Alex. Thank you very much for your super chat this morning. Oh, can I just say, 49 left. I was going to say 69 for the laugh, but 49 left and then they're gone. So I've got it on today. They're going quick. They are knitted Christmas jumpers. I think they're the best one we've ever done. There is a design on the back. I just can't be bothered to spin around. Well, I will do. It does look good from behind. That's what she said. Oh my God, what am I doing? There we go. 49 left. We do ship them worldwide. Link is in the description. Scan the QR code. Christmas is coming and you need to get the order in anyway because you want to get your delivery for Christmas. Thank you very much. Mark, we've done that one. James Smith says, there's nothing more I want than to have another Irish player playing for United. I'm Irish myself, but I don't think Ferguson will work at our club, says James. Well, 55% of you have said you wouldn't go for Evan Ferguson. I have got another vote coming in for you in a minute. But what I do want to do is, just while we do that, I'm just going to throw in something that we're going to do for the left back as well. Who would you sign? You know what? In relation to Evan Ferguson, I think that what I would say is 18 months ago, I'd have been like, let's spend £80 million on him. I lived in Ireland for 3 years. I think it's really exciting that, you know, Ireland have a player of that quality coming through. Desperately want to see more Irish players playing for Manchester United. That's a tradition that's just, you know, not where it needs to be. So I don't dismiss what I was thinking a year ago or 18 months ago. I don't think that's wrong. But like all young players, development can stunt. He's only 20. I wouldn't be surprised by the time he's 24 if he was one of the best strikers. Some strikers take their time. Harry Kane wasn't an amazing striker at 20. I think Harry Kane sort of started when he was like 22, 23, didn't he? So there's plenty of time for it to happen for him. I just don't know whether it's the right player that Manchester United should be going for right now. And that's sort of my stance on it. So I stand firm on that. I've just put 4 strikers out there for you to vote on. Anthony Robinson from Fulham says B major. We'll talk about that in a moment. Thank you very much. Another Irishman, Patrick Lynch, says that as an Irishman, I'd love to see Ferguson at United. However, the last year he's been very injury prone. I'd be very cautious about him for that reason, says Patrick. I think he'll end up going on loan. I don't think anyone will go near him in January for 50 or 60 million pounds. I think he'll go on loan, and that will lead to a permanent sale in the summer. I think that's the plan for Brighton. And I actually think, if we're being completely honest, the reason there's a clue in the loan. The reason Brighton are loaning him is because that's all they can do with him at the moment. I think the potential is there, but I don't think anyone's going to be willing to take it. Stephen Willocks says, similar age to Rasmus, we need guaranteed goals. Mr. Pip has been a member for 56 months. Thank you very much. Andre Smith has been a member for 20 months. Shout out to the members. Thank you very much. It's your membership birthday. Okay, let's move on. Lots to talk about on the show this morning. We've spoken about the striker situation. Let's talk about the left-back situation. So we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, but there is a little bit more. Romano said this yesterday. I'm in the position to confirm once again that Man United will sign a new left wing back. Let's call him as you prefer. Ruben Amorim is playing with back 3, but Man United want to go for a proper left back. From what I'm hearing, even after the Ipswich game, the message from Amorim to Manchester United management is we need a player in that position in 2025. Could be January, could be summer, based on opportunities, based on price, based on several factors. But Manchester United want to go for a player in that position in January. That's not new news. We were speaking about that yesterday as well. But there is a bit of a development on it, because what Plettigol has said is there are 3 names on Manchester United's list for a new left wing back. Alphonso Davies, Theo Hernandez, as we spoke about yesterday, and also Kerkez of Bournemouth. Davies is the desired candidate for United. The interest is concrete. I mean, I've got to be honest, that's a bit of a development from yesterday, because we've always known about Kerkez. I think Alt-Nouri is a name that people have thrown in that I haven't actually heard anything about Alt-Nouri for a very long time in Man United. And that makes me wonder, was that pre-Ineos? Was that a Ten Hag name? But I haven't heard anything about him for a very, very long time. Do think he's a good player. But Kerkez is a player that doesn't seem to move away either. Very, very young, actually, at Bournemouth. I think he's 20 or 21 himself, isn't he? Well, I've already guessed Mamouche's age correctly. Can I get this? I'm going to say 21. Oh, give me another one. Give me another one. That's 2 on 2. Yes, Kerkez is 21, which is absolutely spot on by me. So, yeah, I mean, look, younger than Alphonso Davies, younger than Theo Hernandez. And look, I don't think we need to do a poll on where we would go out of those 3, because I think we would go with Alphonso Davies. Just on the poll for the striker at the moment, Gyökeres has 66% of your vote. Osman 25%, Mamouche 6%, and Mawani 4%. So effectively, I think every United fan is locked in on Gyökeres at the moment. And I'll repeat what I said to you when Amorim got announced. We cannot steer away from Gyökeres to Manchester United stories. We can't. We're going to be doing it a lot. it's going to get linked. It doesn't mean it's even true. It's just the fact that he plays for Sporting. Amorim used to manage him at Sporting. He's leaving in the summer, and Man United want a striker. And he plays in a system that Amorim plays that not everyone else plays. So this is a nailed-on, easy story between now and when he signs for somebody else or us. It's going to happen. We can't avoid it. We can't dismiss this story. We can't confirm this story. It's just going to be there. The interesting thing is, and I think many of you actually agree, I don't always agree with the obvious, but I actually think this is an open goal. Pardon the pun with the striker, but I do think it is the right deal to do because right age, right profile, right system, right qualities, works perfectly with Rasmus, I think. I think it's the right deal to do. I don't actually know that we'll do it, but I do agree with you. I think it's the right one. Jackson is much better than Højlund since last season, says Black Rogue. Honestly, don't really care, mate. It's like, I don't know. I do that a lot on the podcast. I'm happy to do it on the podcast because it's a general football podcast. We do either ors on That's Football. We were doing the Arsenal Sporting game last night. There was loads of them. In a United context, as a United fan, I couldn't give two shits about Jackson or Rasmus, either ors. I don't care. I don't care about Bruno versus Cole Palmer either. I don't care about Mazraoui against Trent. I don't care about Onana against Raya. I don't care about any of that. I'm very content with what we are. We are right at the bottom of the mountain, and other teams and players are climbing higher than us. I don't care. Like I can take the piss out of Man City losing games, but they can say you're 13th in the league. I get that. I'm comfortable with where we are because it's real. I'm not happy with where we are, but it's real. We're not scoring goals with Rasmus. Rashford's not playing well. Bruno's not particularly playing well. We're not winning games. We're in the bottom half of the table. Like we're not in a position to be doing either ors or this is better than that. I mean, it's just childish. If I start saying Rasmus is better than Jackson, what happens? It gets clipped up and Chelsea fans pile on. I'm not interested. Your team's doing well at the moment. Nicholas Jackson's doing well. Well done. Go and talk to another club that's doing well because we're not. We are starting a project at the moment, and hopefully at some point I will be able to say Rasmus is better than Jackson or Rashford's better than Bowen or whatever those conversations are. But at the moment, it's part of the process I'm happy to be in, and I hope a lot of United fans are happy to be in it as well. We are at the bottom of the mountain, and we have got to be happy with that and willing to climb it, because I think some people still want to reach and pretend we're something we're not. I mean, if I could say one thing at the moment, it would be to Amorim or Ineos or, well, probably to Sir Jim Radcliffe. We're fans of this football club. We're very, very loyal. How long is it going to take? Well, at the end of the day, I don't know whether I can answer a question like that. How long's a piece of string? Hold on a minute. I'll tell you how long it's going to take. I think it's going to take 3 to 5 years to fight for the title in the current Premier League atmosphere. If Man City get found guilty and booted out of the league, you might have a way of doing it a little bit quicker, but maybe not if Liverpool or Arsenal become very dominant. But I think we're 3 to 5 years away from fighting for the title. So if I can say that as a United fan, and you lot can say whatever you think as a United fan, and tell me in the chat, Barada said 2028, says Sufyan, exactly. And that, to me, is a message that United need to put out bigger. And the reason I say that is because I still think that we're a football club that doesn't want to be honest with the truth. And that can be very dangerous for a manager. I think it did for Ten Hag, I think it did for Ollie, and I think it did for Jose. We don't want to publicly put it out there enough. It gets hidden in a different interview about something else. We need to be putting those statements out. And I think Amorim's been quite clever about this, but I'd like to see it coming from the top. We are, as fans, are not willing to get into either or debates with other strikers of other clubs, with our strikers or centre-backs or anything like that, because we know where we are. We're 13th. Now is the time for some strong leadership at the top to say, look, we've all got to accept there's been 10 years of mistakes. Even the summer was a mistake, backing Ten Hag and then sacking him. So we have made a lot of mistakes. We now feel that we've got a lot of the foundations in place to be on the right path. But this path needs patience. The last thing Ineos want is a section of the fan base starting Amorim out in the next 18 months. And then it gets bigger and bigger. You need to put those fires out before they even start. You need to make it fireproof. And I liked what Amorim said after the Ipswich game, that there will be more suffering. But a manager can only go so far, because a manager will always be, well, he would say that. Ten Hag spoke about 2 trophies. I think the club needs to be a little bit more honest about how long this is going to take. And I think it's a positive. What Amorim said at the weekend was quite clever. He said, expect more Ipswich games, expect more suffering. We'll try and win games while we keep building. It's a great thing to say, because now we're expecting more suffering, but we might not lose again. We might win every single game and win the title. And if we do that, Amorim's an even better genius. So if I was Ineos, I'd be putting this out a lot more. Look, we're not expecting to be anywhere near we want to be until 2028. If you do it in 2027, happy days. Hi, Mark. I think this project needs to be given time, and I think we will see big progress in 3 to 5 years. Patience is key. Also, get your badge in, says King Callum. Okay, and thank you very much, Callum. He's been a member for 60 months. Legend. Ferguson, 100 million a month ago. Definitely deal to be had, says Tazy. And Mojo's in the house with a super chat. He says, would signing Gyökeres or anyone else from Sporting be seen a similar situation with Ten Hag when a few players from Ajax were signed and we know that didn't do well? I spoke about this yesterday, mate. Hope you're doing well. I think we need to repel this idiocy. If we sign players from Sporting, we need to repel the idiocy there, because it's idiots in the journalism world who have an axe to grind against Ten Hag and Man United. I mean, I've seen Jose Mourinho do this when he came to the Premier League, like bringing in players that he used to manage, like at Porto, etc. There are players that you can trust. There are players that work your system. And look, Manchester United consist. I watched Arsenal last night, right? And it dawned on me again. Watched Arsenal last night, and I thought, if I was doing Arsenal player ratings like we do on the United stand for United, I wouldn't give any Arsenal player lower than a 7. Every player was a 7 or above. I don't remember doing that for Man United. I don't remember doing that for United in the last 10 years. How rare is it for us to give anybody above a 6? It's just so rare. And there's your answer. How do Man United catch up with Arsenal and Man City and Liverpool? You've got to have a team of players that are playing well every week. We just don't do it. We don't do it very often. FA Cup final probably, Shane, to be fair, but we don't do it very consistently, do we? And if you're Amorim and you see a player from Sporting that you know is going to give you 7 out of 10 every week, a bit like what Mazraoui's done. That Mazraoui deal was a very good deal, and Ten Hag knew him. What's wrong with it? People forget that Mazraoui came to Man United because of Ten Hag. Like, he knew Ten Hag, he wanted to come to Man United, and that worked. So we mustn't allow idiots, whether it's press or fans, to say you shouldn't be buying players from the club that you used to manage. You should be buying players from the club you used to manage if they're good enough, because they can come in and give you 7 out of 10 week in, week out, which is what Man United need. We need to do this more and more. So I never understood it. I just thought it was childish journalism because they didn't get Pochettino. And it started before Ten Hag had even managed a game. So they can sit there on their high horse and say, well, we were right, he's been sacked. But you started it before he'd even managed the game. Oh, United are linked to another Ajax player. Well, they had just won the league for the last few years and were doing very well in Europe, and Ten Hag knew who they were. The problem is he bought 1 or 2 players that he shouldn't have got because United was slow. We ended up going for Anthony when they'd sold nearly all their other good players. I just wonder with Ten Hag, and I've said this before, we ended up with Martinez and Anthony in the first summer, and they were 2 of the last players left. Most of them had already gone. Mazraoui had already gone to Bayern. Gravenberch had already gone to Bayern. Timber said no. So there was a lot of players that were probably better than the ones that we got. And that's why, bringing it back to the now, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. Amorim said he won't buy a Sporting player in January. If Gyökeres is moving in January, we're going to have to break that rule, because you don't want to end up you don't want to end up buying a couple of Sporting players, but the best ones have already gone. And that's what happened with Ten Hag. So he wants to bring in players he knows and likes, but more importantly, they can play system. That's the proof I need, says Double D. Exactly. And Scott Page says, I think the biggest issue Sunday was Casemiro and Eriksen. I think we create more once Agate and Mainu come in. Amorim will be great, in my opinion, says Scott Page. And do you think Ten Hag has set us back further with his buys, says Vinny? No, I don't. I've said this before as well. Actually, I've got some stuff about Sporting I want to bring into the show, actually. I'll bring that in now. No, you know what? I actually think that Erik Ten Hag actually has left this football club in a much better position than Moyes did, Van Gaal did, Mourinho did, Ollie did. I mean, Ollie arguably left us in the worst position. I don't dislike Ollie, but it was such a toxic dressing room, as we saw Rangnick inherited, and it only got worse. So I think that with Ten Hag, you look at what's been left behind: Rasmus, Xerxes, Ugarte, Mazraoui, De Ligt, Martinez, Mount, Anana. There are Malassia's come through, Garnacho's come through. There's 10, and I will have missed people out. So there's a lot. Look, he's lost his job. We're not going to change that. He's lost his job. But I would also say that we can get a lot more out of those players as well. Get your comments in though. Thank you very much to King Callum. There we go. Very good. Right, I've had a couple of emails come through from the people who live in Portugal who've started watching the channel, and we're getting a lot of people getting involved in the channel who really obviously clearly enjoy it. So Ricardo Estevez sent us this, and I'm just going to go through some of it because I find it very fascinating. I'm going to skim through it a little bit, but he basically said that wanted to share some info on Amorim. If you want to share it on the channel. He said, mentality, Amorim was introduced as a sporting coach. He said that people was asking him, what if it goes horribly wrong? He said that we asked those people, what if it goes great? This was something of a slogan for him in Sporting. The dressing room is above everything. Amorim is a big defender of a healthy squad, and he will prioritise that over a player's performance. If he feels a player is toxic for the squad, he will move him to train on his own and sell him when he can, even if he's what outside people would consider key players. He did that at Sporting with Acuna and Slimani, two big names. And experience is important. In the other end of keeping a healthy squad, if a player is important to the squad, even if he's not a key player and will rarely play, he will keep him. I'm not sure how Maguire and Shaw are on the dressing room, but if they are important and can contribute with experience on key talks and moments, he will keep them, even if they don't add much on the actual pitch. I thought that was quite interesting because the name that came to my attention straight away with that, thank you very much to Ricardo if you're watching, by the way, is that if he's going to keep people who don't necessarily play a lot but are massive experienced players, Johnny Evans is the biggest indicator of that. I think Maguire could be, but I think Harry Maguire wants to play football. I don't think Harry Maguire would stay at Man United to be behind the scenes or etc. But I think it's interesting around maybe Johnny Evans. Now, Pedro, who anybody who remembers before, has messaged into us as well with some more stuff. I mean, we got a lot of this during the first week of Amorim, but he sent something in that I thought was quite interesting about Ugarte, because he highlighted some players that he thinks won't actually be that important for Manchester United, and this is what I had to say about Ugarte. Ugarte is a particularly sensitive subject. Until Amorim discovered Marita and Yulman, the model for the most defensive position in Sporting's midfielder was Palhinha, who's now at Bayern. That is a midfielder with a remarkable physical and athletic dimension, capable of destroying most of the opponent's advances through the centre, with a high number of steals and a good ability to join the central defenders if necessary. Ugarte was the natural replacement to Palhinha, and although they look similar players technically, the Uruguayan manages to be more competent in connecting offensive plays, although Palhinha without greater ability to do that in more advanced areas on the ground. Sporting fans were happy with the upgrade when Ugarte replaced Palhinha, and Amorim was too. But, and here lies the most interesting point for United fans, Yulmland was Ugarte's replacement, and many wondered why go for a central midfielder who has never had the role of a DM in his career. After some time, Amorim explained that he realised that his 3-4-3 cannot have two central midfielders in that one of them is exempt from creating or connecting plays. Both have to do it, and and everybody quickly realised that Amorim was right. Youngland gives Sporting not only the necessarily defensive cover, but manages to all connect the attack that the team needs. Neither Ugarte nor Polinia will ever have that ability. I agree that Ugarte may play a role in the Man United team in the short term, but I believe that they will be looking at a DM that is not the most up-to-date version of the 3-4-3 that Amorim ultimately wants to build. In the medium term, I'm sure that the player will give way to another type of player who may already be in the team or in the youth formations, although honestly I think he will be found somewhere in the upcoming transfer windows. So I found that very interesting because Pedro's been, really good since Amorim came in, giving us details as a Sporting fan. And I found that quite interesting about Ugarte because I would be completely opposite to that based on my limited knowledge that obviously Ugarte played for Amorim at Sporting, albeit 2 seasons ago. And in the time since then, Amorim has evolved the Sporting system so that his double pivot are actually more creative midfielders as well as being able to defend, which obviously Ugarte isn't. So what Pedro is saying is that in the short term, Ugarte will probably play, but he wouldn't be surprised in the medium to long term if Ugarte actually is replaced, which would be incredible considering we've spent £60 million on him. And a lot of people think, well, was that deal done for it? So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it builds out. You've got somebody like Kone coming through, top player says. You've got Mainu. We've just been linked to Edison, who is a little bit more on the front foot. So I think it's going to be very interesting how things work out, because I think some people want to assume, because we like to assume what will happen and how things will work out, but we don't necessarily have a clue. Pedro also mentioned that Delot would be, very, very important because he can play multiple positions. But on Bruno, he said Bruno was the best player that ever left Sporting in the last 30 years. He's a huge player. The issue that makes it difficult for many fans to appreciate Bruno is his unorthodox positioning. You know what? I've always liked Bruno, but in the last year, he's got on my nerves a bit. But what Pedro said about Bruno here, I've already read it. And I'm reading it and I'm just going, wow. I think he absolutely nails it. He says, the issue that makes it difficult for many fans to appreciate Bruno is his unorthodox positioning. Bruno is a modern 10. He's capable of being box-to-box, an inside forward, or an attacking midfielder. He can do all these variations in the same 90 minutes. He operates at maximum level when given the freedom to choose for himself what the team needs and where. And I think that's probably one of the best descriptions of Bruno I've ever seen, and it gives you a little bit of sympathy towards him. He's basically undefinable. His energy and ability to do so many things is why he's over the pitch everywhere. It's why he free roams everywhere. Sometimes he's a holding midfielder, a box-to-box, an attacking midfielder, a false nine, a winger. He almost adapts to the game and moves himself around because he can play multiple positions. I've said before about Bruno, you almost want to put a little electric shock on his back where if he goes out of a 20-metre box in a central number 10 position, he gets a buzz and has to come back, but he doesn't do that. So I think that's a very good explanation of Bruno, because there's no doubt he's a fantastic player, but I think when you start to think about why he does what he does, it's because he's a freestyler, isn't he? Pedro goes on to say, the problem is that Amorim's 3-4-3 has got very little to do with absolute freedom and spontaneous decisions, a la Bruno, and much more with expected positions and coordinated movements. It doesn't mean that Bruno won't make good performances with Amorim at the helm. It just means that either the player adapts to a much more confined role, or the best thing will be for Manchester United to think about recovering much of that money invested. He's too expensive to just be a good player. And I think, again, we've just spoken about Ugarte there, but I think that's absolutely the best way to explain the situation with Bruno Fernandes. Because the hero ball, or the Hollywood ball, or the long ball is just a very easy example of the Bruno problem. But the deeper problem really is that free roll, unorthodox vibe football where he just goes where he thinks he's needed. Oh, I'll pop out to the right wing. I'll be a false 9. I'll be a 10. I'll be an 8. I'll be a 6. And that's what he's been doing at United. He's been freestyling for 3 years. And in an Amorim system, you can't freestyle. So can Bruno Fernandes become disciplined? And I did a video about Bruno in March saying exactly this. Even before we knew about Amorim, under Ten Hag, he needs positional discipline. If you look at Odegaard, he's positionally disciplined. Can Bruno be disciplined? And what Pedro is saying is if he can't, he'll have to go. So, again, I think most things at United under Amorim, I think most of us are already on this page. It comes back to the player. The player has got to learn to play the system or go. The manager can't learn the player. And I look at Ajax before Ten Hag came in. I look at Ajax Ten Hag. He didn't have a Bruno. He didn't have a Bruno who was free roaming, undisciplined, go where you like. We didn't have that. He didn't have a winger who didn't track back and was allowed to stay forward. So Ten Hag abandoned his principles that got him the United job to accommodate players. The blueprint is there. Amorim must stick to his principles, even if that means removing good/great players. Either Bruno and Rashford and co adapt or go. But the manager can't adapt to them. And I think there has been I know. No, I don't think. I know. I'm not going to do I think anymore. I know for a fact that people high up in that football club were putting pressure onto managers to pick certain players and saying you can't sell them. That's not fair on a manager. So if you were Jose Mourinho and you're saying, I want to sell this player, and then the owners are saying, you can't, we want him to be part of the vision, what's the point in getting Jose Mourinho? And if Amorim comes in and says, my style of football is this, and it's disciplined, and this player can't do it, and the club say, well, you've got to, because he's on a big contract, what's the point? And this is going to be the acid test for the player, for the club, and for the manager. But the manager must stay firm on his principles. Absolutely. Very good points by Pedro there. One thing I did just want to bring in as well, I mean, it's very, very good what he had to say. There's a lot of stuff in there. But just on the data side of things, I found this interesting. He said, data analysis or big data are not a novelty with Amorim, neither something new in football, but many fans and even journalists have no idea how information is obtained and how it is used, let alone its importance in the current game. Small devices the size of a clothespin are inserted into a small pouch on the back of the players' jerseys. These devices mainly measures distance travelled, heart rate, temperature and speed of travel. Not all the data is extremely accurate, but in the readings that can be obtained, it is possible to create a quantification of the player's physical and mental performance abilities. Their level of stress, fatigue and speed during matches are constantly stored and interpreted, both in terms of their evolution during the season and in comparison with other athletes, obviously within the club and externally if you can get that data. Obviously, more technical performance analysis, it's easy to find common statistics, number of passes and successive passes, percentages, tackles. In fact, we can get all this. You can find all this yourself, but you can't get the distance covered, the stress, the fatigue and the speed because that's retained by the club. Together, these two ways of gathering information, the physical and the ones that we get, the passing, etc., are a big component of Amorim's decision-making in choosing the starting 11. What players he will need to complement those on the bench, which ones will suit the opponent better, which ones he should spare high efforts, or which are the most reliable at different stages during the season. But even more important than all this, who are the players that can reach numbers in an evolutionary way and support the team's growth? And I think this explains why he picked the team he did on Sunday. Because the team he picked on Sunday, a lot of those players had been training all week at Carrington, and a lot of the players that didn't start had been on international duty. I know that Man United doesn't sound like something new. What I think is surprising is the interpretation that the training staff makes of the data and to what extent it helps them in the daily decisions. In Amorim's case, it's absolutely decisive. It won't matter much if one wonders if the current coach likes Rashford or if he trusts Shaw's athletic aptitude or even if he prefers Ahmad to Anthony. The numbers that each one offers during training and in games will be, I seriously believe, because I saw it at Sporting day in, day out for 4.5 years, 80% of the decision making. So what Pedro's saying there is, in his experience of following Sporting and Amorim for the last 4.5 years, team selections will be based on the combination of those datas. The datas that we have access to, missed shots, completed passes, etc., and also the physical and mental stress of the player and what they're capable of doing. I'm quite comfortable with that. Players need to understand that there is a new era in football, says Pedro. Pleasing the crowd, being the gaffer's pet, kissing the shirt badge, or only running when the ball is near you, these things are in the past. Numbers can't be hidden. They don't have feelings or favourites. Stats are objective and specific. You're only as good as you perform, regardless of status, salary, or past achievements. Modern football is what arriving at Manchester United. Players should adapt or they will leave. I tell you what, can I read that sentence back again? Pedro, you're a poet. Manchester United players need to understand there is a new era of football coming to Manchester United. Pleasing the crowd, being the gaffer's pet, kissing the shirt badge, winning team photos, positive PR, tweets, or only running when the ball is near you. These are things of the past. Numbers can't be hidden. They don't have feelings or favourites. Stats are objective and specific. You're only as good as you perform, regardless of status, salary, or past achievements. Modern football is what will arrive at Manchester United with Ruben Amorim. I'm getting bloody goosebumps because if this is going to happen, it's what you and I have wanted for years. I think people have been picked on PR. I think people have been picked on history. I think people have been picked on those things. It's not going to happen at Manchester United anymore. It's not going to happen at all. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll be back in a minute actually. I just want to grab something and I've not finished yet, so bear with. I'll tell you what, if you had a bit of patience there, well done. Thank you very much for waiting. Didn't think it was going to take me that long to do it. We've still retained people. Yeah, as I said, I think that, you know, that's probably one of the best. I love what, look, Pedro's brilliant. He's been really good to the channel since we've got Amorim, and so it's almost War and Peace he sends every week, but it's all really, really interesting stuff. And I think before I just catch up on what some of you've said, I embrace this. This is what I wanted at Man United. So many of you wanted it as well. Like, you see a team selection, you see a substitution, and you go, that's not about the data. That's not about performance. That's not about how hard they're running or what their fitness levels are. I've seen players in a United shirt over the last 18 months who've been crap the week before, the week before that, the week before that. They're not running, they're not interested. Oh, they're in the team sheet again. You're telling me there wasn't somebody performing better in training that week, or even a youth player? And it sounds like Amorim will look at data and go, you were shit last week. You're not putting it in. There's a lad in training who is putting it in. You're out the team. Look, it has to happen. Just because it happened at Sporting doesn't mean it'll happen at United. Lots of things happened at Ajax that didn't happen at United. But if Ineos are real, this is what we've been talking about for probably 8 years. I hope it's going to happen. I really, really do. Never understood Eric buying Ajax players when he said he wouldn't bring the Ajax system. Amorim buying his players makes sense in moderation, says Cole. I just think if you are taking on any job as a manager and you're going into a difficult place and you know people from somewhere else that can come in and do a job for you and know you and like you, it's better than going and getting someone from somewhere else you never worked with before. To me, look, I've been around management for 20 years, so I've been around football for a lot longer. I just think maybe some of these people who write these articles or talk this shit haven't been around that sort of world. But I just think it's logical. If I'm running a kitchen in a restaurant and I need some waiting staff and I was at another bar and they were really good, I'd bring them in rather than run interviews on people I haven't worked with before. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go for new, but when you're trying to get results, especially when you've got pressure, bringing in people you know. Don't bring in favourites who are shit. Like, don't bring your mates in. Bring in people who can work. United are now charging fans £66 per ticket, cheapest across the board for the rest of the season. There's no concession for OAPs, carers or kids, says Gems. Disgusting. You know what? What I would say about that is, though, I will look into that and we'll definitely have a conversation about that. I've been a bit busy the last week and I have missed a few things. I will look into that. I think these things are really important, but there are fan groups out there that talk a lot and do fuck all. It started off with the Glazers out. The Glazers are still here, and they moan about fan content. Fucking hell, do your job. Fan content does a lot better than what you think it does in relation to getting positivity and news out to people. What the fuck's going on? Why are fans being ripped off in the middle of the season? Like, I'm not having it. 250 people lost their job in the summer, and now fans are paying to help the club prop the club up again. If this is true, like, this is just look, what are you going to make off fans, and you're paying fucking shit players hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. Like, yeah, this is the thing. I agree with William. So fans, I don't know what it's like anywhere else in the moment, but it's hard in the UK. It's hard in the UK. Like, people are not getting massive pay rises. There are energy costs. There are all sorts of costs. Petrol's not cheap. And then, let's add another tenner on here to fans. These fans travel from all around the bloody country, all around Europe, all around the world. Why are we being ripped off? And I wouldn't mind if it was being reflected in getting rid of some of the shit out of the first team, but it isn't. There's organisations. There's the Man United Supporters Trust. There's the 58. There's people who can do stuff about this, and they should be doing stuff about it. I'd have to read more of it, though, to be fair, because I don't know. Those groups might be doing something, and what Jem says might not be completely accurate. But this is what you will always get accountability on the United stand, because not everything is rosy and not everything is raining. Like, not everything is good and not everything's bad. And the Glazers are bad, and they've been proven bad over a long period of time. Ineos aren't even a year in. I think they've done a lot of good, but they've also done some bad. A lot of people were made redundant who were reliant on those jobs. And if we're now seeing fans hit in the pocket, it needs to be called out. You can't, this fan base is more important than that. And we can't just go, oh, I like Amorim, so it doesn't matter what happens. I remember the Red Knights from about, was it 2011? They were trying to get the Glazers out, and I think it was it Keith Harris was one of the people involved in that, and he said the protests out the ground are fantastic, but I don't want to see the green and gold scarves in the ground, because the message is you're protesting, but not enough that you wouldn't watch the game with your scarf on. And what he was saying is the protests would have been better if fans didn't go in the ground and showed the Glazers that we're so serious, we'll even sacrifice watching the club we love to protest against you. And nobody ever did that, did they? I really think that Rashford peaked early and is now on the decline. Let's be honest, he was never supposed to reach the heights he has and has essentially overachieved. We need to stop relying on him, says Ed B. Would it be worth getting Obi Martin into the first team, says Chris? I think it could happen. I think there's a few people it could happen with. He said, so yeah, I think that could happen, Chris. I've overrun a little bit here, but it's all good. It's all good. Amorim's press conference is at 1 o'clock, so we're going to be live around 1 o'clock again anyway, because I'm obviously loving those at the moment. Very, very interesting. Did he take any Braga players to Sporting, says Stephen? I don't know. I don't know about that one. Morning, Mark, says Tom Grant. It's all good and exciting talking about new strikers, but what's the point if we aren't going to get the service into the box? Spot on. We should start buying talents from South America, says Sammy. This is something we're trying to do, but we've just not been good at yet. I think we will start doing that. We are desperately trying to infiltrate that market. He took Palhinha from Braga, says Lyndon. There's one straight away. And he was only at Braga for 13 games, says Guy Fawkes. Adam says he raided the youth at Sporting and called them up, something which wouldn't do us any harm. Look, fantastic show this morning. I genuinely think for all the news about strikers and stuff, and we love to do that on the news show, the best bits for me were from Pedro. And that's from the community. Absolutely loved that stuff about stats and Bruno and Agate. They're the three things I've taken from the show this morning that I've absolutely loved. The data, the Bruno and the Agate. You don't get that anywhere else. Thanks everyone for watching. Fantastic community. We're back just after 1 o'clock. It's a 7 o'clock show tonight because I'm doing Real Madrid Liverpool at 8 on That's Football. Make sure you join me for that. We had some really good either-ors and conversations last night. Speak to you all in a bit. Take care. Don't forget, there's probably less than 49 now, but if you want to get a Christmas jumper, they'll probably be gone by the end of the day. They ship worldwide. Links in the description. Scan the QR code. When they're gone, they're gone. They're knitted. Speak to you in a bit.